The girl in the night rain didn't fall like water. It whispered like sorrow, dripping down from the steel beams of the megacity as if the sky itself wept. Neon lights reflected off the soaked pavement in fractured colors: green, violet, blue, painting broken promises across the alleyways. Curled in the shadows near a ventilation grate was a small figure, motionless, shivering, unseen. Her skin had the shimmer of ether blood, soft like starfire yet bruised with time and cold. Her left arm was wrapped in scavenged thermal cloth. The right bore the strange markings of the enari caste then, silver veins that pulsed faintly under her skin. The enari were once rulers of 7 systems. Now they were scattered and hunted, and she, barely more than a girl, was one of the last. Her name was Selah, but no one had called her that in months. Doors never opened for her, not in this city. Humans walked by with their heads down, eyes blank, afraid to see what might remind them of their guilt. Others from the stars passed by, too drunks, mercenaries, traitors, but they either mocked her or ignored her completely. She had become invisible, not because she lacked presence, but because she made people uncomfortable. Until tonight, a bootstep echoed near the corner, steady, slow, unhurried. She looked up, weary, heart already preparing to be ignored again. Instead, the man stopped. Not close, not too far. He didn't say anything at first, just watched her. Rain dripped off the brim of his hood. She couldn't read his face, not until he knelt. "You're cold," he said softly. She blinked. No one had said that to her. Not in this language, not with kindness. He removed his coat, thick, warm, still carrying the smell of fire and cinnamon from somewhere far away. Without asking, he wrapped it around her. Her breath caught in her throat. The coat was heavier than expected, not because of weight, but because it meant something. "I've seen you before," he continued. "Always outside, always alone." She flinched slightly, uncertain. "My name's Jonah." His voice was rough, like stone soaked in honey. Not polished, but real, alive. "Do you want to come inside?" Inside. She had no idea what that even meant anymore. A part of her didn't trust it. Kindness could be a trick. Her people had learned that too late. But there was something different about Jonah. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. There was no pity in his eyes, no hesitation, only calm. Behind him, the door to a small bakery stood open. The smell of bread and steam curled into the alley, warm and full of memory. Selah hesitated. Then, slowly, shakily, she nodded. Jonah helped her to her feet, gently, like she was made of glass. They stepped into the light. What Selah didn't see, what Jonah noticed with quiet awe, was that as she crossed the threshold, the silver markings on her arm pulsed stronger. Just once, something ancient, long asleep, stirred deep within her blood. Something waiting for a moment like this. And Jonah was no ordinary man either. Not really. Not where it counted. Asterisk warmth and memorized warmth hit her like a wave. Inside the bakery, the air smelled of yeast, honey, and cinnamon bark. Steam rose from a row of loaves cooling on wooden shelves, and a small stove in the corner crackled softly, casting gentle shadows against the walls. Everything inside was humble old brick walls, creaky floorboards, faded cushions, but it felt sacred. It felt like somewhere that still remembered kindness. Selah stood awkwardly just past the door, not sure if she was allowed to move. The coat still hung around her like armor, too big, too heavy, too real. Her eyes flicked to the corners of the room, looking for danger, old habits, reflexes built over too many nights under stars that didn't care if she lived or died. Jonah moved behind the counter and pulled 2 mugs from a shelf. Without asking, he poured her something dark and steaming, the scent wrapped around her like a soft blanket. "It's just chocolate," he said, "from Earth. Nothing fancy." Selah didn't reply. She reached out with careful fingers, like the mug might vanish if she touched it. It was hot against her skin. Too hot, but she held it anyway. It burned her hands. But the pain grounded her. Pain meant she was still alive. Jonah didn't push. He didn't ask questions. He just sat across from her at the small table and drank. In silence. Time passed gently, like snowfall. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside, it didn't matter. After a while, her voice came softer than a whisper. "Why?" Jonah raised an eyebrow, but didn't answer. She tried again. "Why did you open the door?" Jonah looked at his hands for a long time before speaking. "Because I remember what it was like when no one did." His voice held a heaviness that made her pause. She searched his eyes. There were scars there not on the skin, but behind it, stories he hadn't told, memories that still lived in his silence. "You're enari," he said gently. She flinched. Just the name alone brought pain, shame, fear. "Don't worry. I don't care what they say," he added quickly. "I know what I saw." "What did you see?" she asked. Barely audible. Jonah leaned forward. "I saw a girl who never stopped breathing, never stopped surviving, even when the universe gave up on her. That stunned her. No one had ever said that before. Not in any world. Not in any language. Your markings," he added, pointing lightly to her arm. "They shimmer when you're near light, and when you stepped in, they pulsed. Once, like they remembered something." Selah lowered her sleeve instinctively, hiding the silver veins. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said, his voice calm. "I don't need to know everything. Just let yourself be safe for now." But the truth was, Jonah did know something, more than he admitted. When Selah entered, he felt something shift, not just in her but in him, like a hidden switch flicked deep inside his soul. An old dream, half forgotten, whispered back to life. Because Jonah wasn't just a baker once, a long time ago. Before he lost everything, he had been part of something bigger, an earthbound envoy sent to study ancient energy signatures in lost species. The enari were one of them, until they vanished, or so they thought. And now, here she was, half-starved, shivering, asleep on doorsteps, a living echo of a vanished people. And Jonah, maybe he was more than just the man who opened the door. Maybe this was fate knocking back. The lights beneath her skin that night. Selah didn't sleep, not deeply, not fully. She lay on the soft couch in Jonah's upstairs loft, wrapped in blankets that smelled of cedar and flower. A small lantern flickered on the nightstand beside her, casting golden shadows across the ceiling. It should have felt peaceful, safe, warm, and part of her tried to accept it. But another part of her, older, sharper, scarred, refused. She kept, her eyes half open, muscles tense, heart counting every creak in the wood. Her body didn't trust safety. Not yet. Safety had always been the thing that came right before betrayal, but something was different here. Downstairs, Jonah was still awake. She heard the soft clatter of dishes, the low hum of music from an old speaker. Not words, just melody. Something from Earth, maybe, slow. Gentle. She sat up slowly and glanced at her arm. The silver lines were glowing, not bright, just enough to see them clearly in the dark, like veins of starlight beneath her skin. Her heart pounded. This had only happened once before, on the night her people were taken. That memory came rushing back now, heavy and unwanted. Metal ships cutting through the sky, fire and dust. Enari elders falling to their knees. Her mother's voice screaming her name, then going silent. Selah had run. She had hidden, and she had survived. But her world had ended. Since then, she had drifted from planet to planet, never staying, never trusting, and never glowing. Until now. The next morning, Jonah was already baking when she came down. Flour dusted his arms. He smiled when he saw her. Good sleep. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked past him to the mirror behind the counter, rolled up her sleeve. "It's happening again," she said, voice shaking. The glow. Jonah's hands froze over the dough. Then slowly, he wiped them on a towel and joined her. "Do you know what it means?" she asked, eyes locked on his. Reflection. "I might," Jonah said, "but I want to hear what you feel." She looked down at her arm. The glow pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. It didn't feel dangerous. It felt alive. "It feels like something inside me woke up," she said, "but it's confused, like it's reaching for something, but doesn't know what." Jonah nodded. "Your people weren't just rulers," he said quietly. "They were conduits. The enari had a unique bond with energy. They didn't just use it. They became part of it. That's why so many feared you. It's why they hunted you." Selah's eyes widened. "You know all this?" "I studied it," he said, "before everything fell apart." "Before what?" Jonah paused, then finally said, "Before Earth stopped sending explorers. Before they shut down all off-world missions. Before I became just a baker." Selah stepped back. "So, this isn't just about kindness, is it? You knew who I was." "I suspected," he said gently. "But that's not why I opened the door." She stared at him, breathing hard, confused, angry, afraid. "Then why?" Jonah looked straight at her. "Because someone once opened the door for me when I had nothing. and it changed everything. Silence fell between them, tense, heavy. Then Sayla whispered, "My body is changing. I feel it, and I don't know what to do." Jonah took a step closer. "Then stay," he said. "We'll figure it out together." But neither of them knew how quickly time was running out, because deep in the skies above, a satellite belonging to the coalition forces had just detected her energy signature, and enari weren't supposed to exist. But now they knew she was here, and they were coming. The signal that shouldn't exist in the cold control room orbiting the third moon of Vesker Prime. An old monitor flickered to life. A technician in a gray uniform leaned forward, squinting at the readout. Energy spikes. Narrow band. Faint, but unmistakable. He tapped a few keys, then froze. The pattern was ancient, coded in a frequency most systems had forgotten. But he hadn't. His throat went dry. "Commander," he called out, voice tight. "We've got an enari trace." The room shifted instantly. The other officers turned toward him. Silence fell. The commander, tall, precise, with a voice like I stepped over and scanned the display. Location, Sector 9 Delta, Outer Colonies, Planet E315, Earth Legacy Zone. The commander narrowed her eyes. "Earth? That world's off limits." The technician swallowed hard. "The signature is enari, sir. No mistake. The mark frequency is exact. Dispatch a retrieval unit," she said, "and mark it classified. High risk, but it's Earth." He hesitated. "Should we alert their embassy?" "No," she snapped. "If the humans find out, they'll protect her, and we can't afford that." Down on the planet, Jonah felt a ripple through the air. He had been slicing bread when the hairs on his neck stood up like the static of an incoming storm. He stepped outside, looked up into the morning sky, and saw nothing, but he felt it, something distant, watching. Approaching. He returned to the kitchen slowly. Sayla sat at the table, reading from an old data pad he lent her. She looked up and frowned. "What is it?" "Nothing," Jonah lied. "Just weather shifting." But Sayla wasn't convinced. Her senses had sharpened. She could hear the hum of machinery from far away now. She could feel magnetic shifts in the air. Her enari blood, once dormant, was waking more each day. And with it came something else, memories that weren't hers. Dreams of cities built on clouds, of voices that sang in harmony with the stars. She saw herself, older, brighter, leading someone. Vision she didn't understand. "Jonah," she said quietly, "something's coming, isn't it?" He sighed, setting down the knife. "I don't know what yet, but yes, I think so." "You knew this would happen when I came inside," she whispered. "I hoped it wouldn't, but yes," he admitted. "Your light doesn't stay hidden forever." She stood, restless, her silver lines glowing stronger now. "What do they want?" "From me, some want to study you," he said. "Others want to erase what you are, and a few," he paused, "a few still remember what your people could do." "What could we do?" He stepped closer and looked her in the eye. "You could bend the laws of energy, shift time within small fields, heal the broken, create stillness in chaos. Your people were like living bridges between physics and faith. Then why destroy us? Because you couldn't be controlled." Sayla clenched her fists. "So, what do I do now?" Jonah handed her something small, a device like a seed, glowing faintly blue. "You survive," he said, "but not alone." "What is this?" "A key," he said, "but not for a door, for a memory. When the time comes, hold it to your heart. It will show you what was hidden." Sayla looked at it, trembling. Outside, the clouds began to part unnaturally. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the sky. The hunters had arrived. The hunters in the sky ships came without warning. 3 of them, sleek, black, like shadows made of metal, hovered just beyond the clouds. No insignias, no light, no diplomacy. They hovered above the old town like silent judges, unseen by most, but not by Jonah, not by Sayla. She felt them first, a pressure in her chest, like her lungs were being squeezed from the inside. She gripped the table's edge to steady herself as the silver markings along her arms flared bright, casting strange light across the kitchen. Jonah closed the bakery's shutters and locked the doors. "We don't have long," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "They didn't come to talk." "Who are they?" she asked, her breath unsteady. "Coalition retrieval units," Jonah replied. "Silent division. They work off record. They find anomalies and they erased them. But I'm not an anomaly, Sayla said. I'm someone. You're more than someone, Jonah said, stepping closer. And that's exactly why they fear you. The floor trembled. Boots struck the earth outside heavy. Discipline. The units had landed. They'll scan for your energy signature, Jonah said. You're stronger now. Glowing without meaning to. We can't hide you anymore. Sayla clenched the seed-shaped key Jonah had given her. It was warm now, pulsing like a heart. You said this is a memory, she whispered. What does it show? Not what, Jonah said. Who? He pulled a hatch open behind the kitchen. Stairs led to a deep cellar beneath the bakery. It wasn't just for storage. The walls were lined with shielding material, old tech, pre-banned, illegal on most worlds. Built to hide heat, energy, thoughts. Stay there until I call you, he said. No, she said. I won't leave you. He touched her face gently. You've already brought something back to life in me, Sayla. And if this is the end for me, then so be it. But it won't be the end for you. Outside, the door slammed open. Coalition agents stormed in, faceless in black armor, weapons drawn. Jonah stood alone in the center of the bakery, arms raised. Jonah. Kale, the lead agent said, step aside. There's a signal in this building. A threat to galactic order. Jonah didn't move. You have no jurisdiction here, he said. Earth has no standing in galactic law. The agent snapped. You're just a leftover planet with a bakery. Jonah smiled. Maybe, but even a leftover planet can bake a revolution. Without warning, he threw a small pellet across the floor. Light exploded. Thick smoke filled the room. Alarms rang in the agent's helmets. Below, in the cellar. Sayla pressed the seed-shaped device to her chest. It lit up blue, gold, and white, pouring light into her skin. Her body arched. She gasped. Images flooded her vision. Her mother, her people, her own face, older, standing in a hall of mirrors made of light. Symbols etched in air. Words in a language she didn't know she knew. You are not alone, the memory whispered. You are not the last. Her eyes flew open. The light around her wasn't fading, it was growing, shaping. Her veins glowed like galaxies. Her fear turned to fire. Upstairs, Jonah stood his ground as the agents raised their weapons. And below, Sayla rose from the cellar. Not a girl anymore. Not just an enari, a beacon. Asterisk, the girl, who became a Bacanthe. Floorboards cracked softly as Sayla stepped out from the cellar. Light spilled from her skin, not harsh, not wild, but steady, controlled. Her markings no longer just shimmered. They moved like rivers of starlight, pulsing with memory and meaning. Her eyes had changed too. No longer afraid. They were clear, focused like she remembered who she was. The soldiers turned as one, weapons rising. Don't move, the lead agent barked. Stay where you are. Jonah stood between them, breath sharp, ready to shield her. But Sayla placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. It's all right, she whispered. He stepped aside, slowly, eyes full of quiet awe. The agent stepped forward. Enari energy is forbidden on coalition-aligned worlds. Surrender yourself, or be neutralized. Sayla looked him in the face, not trembling, not begging. Your laws were written in fear. She said calmly, mine were born from hope. She raised her hand. The air stilled. The hum of weapons died. One by one, the soldiers staggered, blinking behind their visors, uncertain. Not harmed, but disarmed by something deeper than technology. Something inside them shifted, like a memory. They had forgotten was suddenly whispered into their minds. Sayla didn't speak again. She simply stepped forward. Her light reached them, and their weapons lowered. What are you doing? The lead agent gasped. Nothing violent, she said. Just reminding you what you once were. Before the silence. Before the fear. He fell to his knees, shaking, not in pain, but in understanding. And outside, others came. Townspeople, drawn by the glow. No one ran. No one screamed. They watched. Even the sky responded, clouds parting, sunlight pouring down for the first time in weeks. Birds cried overhead. The air smelled clean. Jonah watched all of it with a strange ache in his chest. Because in that moment, he saw something more than survival. He saw healing. Something the galaxy hadn't known in lifetimes. Sayla turned toward him, the glow softening. You believed in me when I didn't know who I was, she said. He smiled faintly. You gave me someone to believe in. And then she looked out at the crowd. I'm not the only one, she said aloud. There are more like me, forgotten, hidden, and they're waiting for light, for a place, for someone to say, come. Inside, the crowd stood in silence. Then a child stepped forward, a small girl with a scar on her cheek. She reached for Sayla's hand, and Sayla took it, because that was what this moment meant. Not rebellion, not revenge, but returning to something old and sacred, a truth buried under steel and silence. The coalition ships above began to retreat, unsure, unwilling to fire on a light they couldn't understand. Jonah turned to her. What now? Sayla looked to the sky. Now we find the others, she said. Now we open the door for them, and across the stars, something ancient stirred awake. Not just the enari, but hope itself. The last door the next day, the bakery felt different. Sunlight spilled through the open windows, and the air buzzed not just with warmth or scent, but with intention. Word of what had happened spread faster than any transmission. No official reports, no headlines, but still, they knew farmers came from the outer fields. Station mechanics paused work and followed the light. Old humans, scarred and bent from years of silence, stood beside alien traders who once avoided eye contact. They didn't understand what they saw in Sayla, but they felt it and across planets. Others woke up on a mining station near Alpha Calis. A child with faint silver lines on her palm looked out the window and cried without knowing why. On a trade moon near Traxos, a street performer sang a song in a language no one remembered, and the lights in her fingertips began to glow. Something old was returning. Saela stood on the bakery roof with Jonah beside her. They both stared at the sky. Ships had come and gone. Some ran, others stayed. The coalition agents never returned. She held the seed-shaped device that had started it all. It was no longer glowing. It had given her what she needed. Not just knowledge, but a calling. I want to build something, she said softly. Jonah tilted his head. What kind of something? A place, she said. Not just a shelter, not just another hiding spot. A real place, where no one sleeps on doorsteps anymore. Jonah's voice was warm. What will you call it? She looked out over the rooftops, toward the distant hills. The threshold, she said. Because it's not the end of the road, it's the start of stepping in. And so they began. First, it was a room above the bakery, then a second floor, then a courtyard. People brought scraps, beams, light stone, and memory. Some didn't have much, but they brought hands and hope. Children painted the walls. Elders planted trees. Saela stood at the center of it all, not as a queen, not as a weapon, but as a light. She helped every person who arrived remember one truth: they mattered. And Jonah, he never returned to silence. He stood beside her always, not as a guide, not as a savior, but as the one who opened the first door. One evening, after months had passed, a small child tugged at Sayla's hand. Are you magic? The child asked. Saela knelt beside her and smiled. Double quotes. No, she said gently. I was just cold, and someone told me to come inside. The child smiled back and ran off, laughing. Jonah leaned on the wall beside her. So, he said, think they'll ever tell this story in the schools? Sayla grinned. Maybe, but I hope they change the ending. He raised an eyebrow. To what? She looked at the open doors around her, the lights in the windows, the voices rising, like song from every corner of the threshold. To something like this, she whispered, and she never had to sleep in the cold again. And far above, in the oldest part of the galaxy where light and time are thin, something wrote itself into the stars. This is how humanity stood apart. Not with power, not with war, but with one open door.